They thought I'd just fade into the background after the humiliation. They thought stripping me of my role and my voice would erase 2 decades of trust I'd built. But when their shiny new hire started bleeding millions, they had no idea the scalpel waiting to finish the job was already in my hands. 20 years of handwritten notes they mocked as pre-digital relics had become the foundation of every major client relationship. And when those clients started calling me instead of them, well, let's just say I learned that revenge tastes sweetest when served with a termination letter. My name is Claire Donovan, and for 22 years, I've built my career one handwritten note at a time. At 42, I'd earned my place as Director of Client Relations at Northgate Solutions, one of the largest logistics corporations on the East Coast. My leather-bound notebooks weren't just tools, they were the foundation of relationships worth hundreds of millions in annual revenue. The morning everything changed started like any other executive meeting. Mahogany table, panoramic views of downtown, the familiar hum of PowerPoint presentations. I sat in my usual spot, third from the CEO's right, my current notebook open to a fresh page, the date at the top. March 15th. I should have recognized the omen. "Before we begin," Evan Price announced, his 30-something face glowing with the kind of confidence that comes from an MBA and zero real-world experience, "I'd like to address something." Our new Vice President of Strategic Operations had been with us for exactly 6 weeks. 6 weeks of disrupting processes, questioning systems, and treating institutional knowledge like outdated software. He reached across the table and picked up my notebook. "This," he said, holding it up like evidence in a courtroom, "is what's holding Northgate back." The room went silent. 20 executives turned to watch as he flipped through pages of my carefully documented client insights, meeting notes, relationship maps drawn by hand. "Pre-digital relics," he continued, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. "While Claire here is playing secretary with her little diary, our competitors are using AI-driven CRM systems, machine learning, predictive analytics." My face burned, but I kept my expression neutral. 20 years of boardroom politics had taught me that the first person to show emotion loses. "That little diary," I said quietly, "contains the personal preferences of every major client's decision-maker, their kids' names, their golf handicaps, the restaurants where they close deals." "Exactly my point," Evan interrupted. "Antiquated relationship management. We need systems, not scribbles." The CEO, Robert Thornton, shifted uncomfortably. He'd been singing Evan's praises since the hire young blood. Fresh perspectives, digital transformation. His eyes met mine briefly before sliding away. "Perhaps we should move on to the quarterly reports," Robert suggested. But Evan wasn't finished. He slid my notebook back across the table with deliberate carelessness, pages fluttering. "I'm implementing a new policy. All client information will be digitized into our new CRM platform. These," he gestured dismissively at my notebook, "are now prohibited in executive meetings. We're not running a 19th century operation here." The room erupted in uncomfortable shuffles and cleared throats. Sarah Martinez from finance gave me a sympathetic glance. Tom Bradley from operations studied his coffee cup like it held the secrets of the universe. Not one person spoke up. 22 years, not one voice in my defense. I closed my notebook slowly, the leather cover soft under my fingertips. Beneath the table, my hands were steady, but inside, something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just about notebooks or technology. This was a calculated humiliation, a public execution of everything I represented. "Of course," I said, my voice carrying the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. "I'll make sure to adapt to your new policies. Evan." His smile widened, mistaking my composure for submission. The meeting continued, but I heard nothing else. My mind was already elsewhere, calculating. Every client relationship I'd cultivated, every deal I'd closed with a handshake and a handwritten follow-up note, every late-night call I'd taken because I was the only one they trusted, it all crystallized into a single, clear truth. They thought they were erasing me. They had no idea they were writing their own ending. As the meeting concluded, I gathered my things with practiced efficiency. The prohibited notebook slipped into my briefcase with the others' 22 years of institutional memory they'd just declared worthless. "Claire," Robert called as I reached the door. "A moment." But I didn't turn back. There would be other moments, better ones where I wouldn't be the one left standing empty-handed. In the elevator, my phone buzzed, a text from Margaret Chen at Goldfield Shipping, one of our biggest clients. "Heard there are changes happening. Everything okay?" Word traveled fast in this industry. I typed back, "Everything's perfectly fine." For them, it would be... The erosion started slowly, like water wearing down stone. First, it was the meeting invitations that stopped arriving in my inbox. The quarterly strategy session, the one I'd led for 5 years, happened without me. I found out from Sarah Martinez, who slipped me the agenda in the break room with an apologetic shrug. "Evan says it's being streamlined," she whispered. "Digital-first participants only." Whatever that meant. Next came the speaking arrangements. For 2 decades, I'd opened every major client presentation with a relationship overview: who was who, what mattered to them, how to navigate their organizational politics. Now, my slot was replaced by Evan's data dashboards and predictive models. "We need to let the numbers tell the story," he announced in one meeting I was still invited to. "Not anecdotes from ancient history." Ancient history. That's what my institutional knowledge had become. The physical marginalization was more subtle but equally deliberate. My nameplate disappeared from the executive conference room's permanent seating chart. My parking spot, second row, earned through years of being first in and last out, was reassigned to accommodate EV charging infrastructure. I found myself hunting for spaces in the overflow lot, walking through puddles in my heels. But it was the small cruelties that cut deepest. In meetings, Evan would interrupt whenever I spoke. "Let's table Claire's point and focus on actionable metrics. I think what Claire is trying to say, though, we should really look at the data instead. That's an interesting perspective from the pre-digital era. But moving forward..." Pre-digital. He never missed a chance to use that phrase, always with a slight smile that dared me to object. My presentations were suddenly requiring revision for digital integration. My client reports were returned with track changes suggesting I modernize the approach. 20-page documents I'd spent days crafting were reduced to single-slide infographics by Evan's team. "We're helping you adapt," he said during one particularly humiliating review session. "Think of it as professional development." The younger employees began avoiding me. Evan had made me radioactive, a walking reminder of the old ways, the inefficient past. In hallway conversations, people would fall silent when I approached. Lunch invitations dried up. I ate alone at my desk, watching through my office window as the world moved on without me. Then came the project reassignments, the Morrison Industries renewal. A relationship I'd cultivated for 15 years was handed to Derek, fresh from his MBA program. "You'll still be involved," Robert assured me in a rare one-on-one, "in an advisory capacity." Advisory capacity, code for watching someone else take credit for your work. The final insult came during the Q3 all-hands meeting. Evan presented his digital transformation success metrics, complete with animated charts showing improved efficiency across all departments. "I want to particularly highlight our progress in modernizing client relations," he announced. "By eliminating outdated practices and redundant processes, we've increased our operational efficiency by 30%. Redundant processes, that's what I'd become. After the meeting, I found a folded note tucked under my keyboard. No signature, but I recognized the handwriting Jamie from the internship program, one of the few young employees who still made eye contact with me. "You're the only one I trust here. They're making a huge mistake." I kept that note. It would matter later, though neither of us knew it then. The transformation was complete when I received the memo about my office relocation. "Space optimization," it read. My corner office with its view of the harbor would be converted to a collaborative innovation hub. My new space, a cubicle on the 3rd floor, between the printer room and the kitchen. I stood in my office that evening, watching the sunset paint the harbor gold. 22 years of watching this view, of closing deals against this backdrop, of proving that relationships were the cornerstone of business. My phone buzzed. A text from James Morrison at Morrison Industries. Had a strange call from someone named Derek today. Says he's taking over our account. What's going on? Claire. I typed back carefully. Northgate is implementing some structural changes. I'm sure Derek will take excellent care of you. His response was immediate. I don't want Derek. I want the person who remembered my daughter's piano recital last month. But what James wanted and what Northgate had decided were two different things. I was being surgically removed from the organization while still technically employed a corporate ghost, haunting hallways that no longer recognized my presence. That night, I updated my timeline document. Every slight, every reassignment, every small humiliation carefully cataloged, not out of bitterness, but out of habit. 22 years of taking notes had taught me that the smallest details often mattered most. Evan thought he was erasing me systematically, professionally, surgically. He thought I'd simply fade away, another relic swept aside by progress. He had no idea that every move he made was being documented, not in leather-bound notebooks he could confiscate, but in the memories of clients who'd started asking uncomfortable questions, in the minds of employees who'd begun to notice that efficiency metrics couldn't replace institutional knowledge, in the mathematical certainty that when you remove the cornerstone, the building doesn't stand stronger, it starts to crack. The cracks were already forming. Evan just couldn't see them yet. But I could, and I was taking very careful notes. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, marked confidential, with that special HR formatting that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. Organizational restructuring meeting. Mandatory attendance. Thursday, 2 p.m. Conference room B, not the executive boardroom, but the smaller one they used for terminations. I'd seen this choreography before, just never from this angle. Thursday came wrapped in spring rain. I chose my best suit, charcoal gray, the one I'd worn to close the Hartfield Industries deal. If they were going to execute me, I'd make them look me in the eye while wearing armor. Conference room B smelled like fear and furniture polish. Janet from HR sat across from me, her smile as thin as the folder in front of her, beside her. Evan lounged in his chair like he was watching a Netflix show he'd already seen. Claire, Janet began, as you know, Northgate is evolving to meet modern market demands. Evolving, I repeated, tasting the corporate euphemism. Is that what we're calling it? Evan leaned forward. Your position has been eliminated. We're transitioning to a fully integrated digital client management system. Your methods simply don't align with our forward trajectory. 22 years reduced to a misalignment. Janet pushed the folder across the table. We're prepared to offer 2 weeks severance. Given the elimination of your role, you'll understand why we can't provide more substantial compensation. I didn't touch the folder. 2 weeks for 22 years. It's a generous offer, Evan interjected, considering the role no longer exists. The rain hammered against the windows. Somewhere in this building, my former office was already being measured for its next occupant. I'll need you to clean out your workspace by end of day, Janet continued. Security will escort you. Of course they will, I murmured. Any company property, including client files, will remain with the company, I finished. I'm familiar with the process. Evan's satisfaction radiated across the table. He'd won. The dinosaur was extinct, making room for his digital revolution. I signed where they pointed, initialed where they demanded. Each signature felt like signing my own obituary. When we finished, Evan stood first, straightening his tie. It's nothing personal. Claire, evolution doesn't care about feelings. He left without shaking my hand. The security guard Marcus, who I'd known for 15 years, whose daughter I'd written a college recommendation for, looked miserable as he walked me to my office. I'm sorry, Ms. Donovan, he whispered. Don't be, Marcus. Jobs are hard to come by. My office was a museum of relationships, Photos with clients at charity galas, handwritten thank you notes framed on the wall, 22 years of proving that business was personal, despite what they taught in MBA programs. I packed methodically, personal items only the photos, a crystal paperweight from the Goldfield account signing, my coffee mug that read, "World's Okayest Boss." The notebooks, my precious notebooks, sat in neat rows on the shelf behind my desk. "Those stay," Evan said from the doorway. He'd been watching, waiting for this moment. "Company property. All documentation created during company time belongs to Northgate." My hand hovered over the leather spines. Inside those pages lived every relationship I'd built, every insight I'd gathered, every personal detail that transformed transactions into partnerships. "Of course," I said, stepping back. "You'll want to digitize them immediately. I'm sure your new system will capture all the nuance." His smile faltered slightly. We both knew software couldn't replicate what those pages held, but admitting that would undermine his entire vendetta. Marcus carried my box as we walked to the elevator. Heads popped out of offices, some sympathetic, others already calculating how to divide my territory. By the exit, Sarah Martinez pressed a card into my hand. "My personal cell," she whispered, "in case you need anything." The parking garage felt like a tomb. Marcus loaded my box into my car, then surprised me with a quick hug. "They're making a mistake," he said. "Yes," I agreed. "They are." Driving home in the rain, my phone buzzed repeatedly. Word was already spreading. 3 texts from clients, 2 from competitors, 1 from a headhunter. I ignored them all. There would be time for those conversations, but not yet. At home, I poured a glass of wine and sat at my kitchen table. The box of my professional life sat unopened beside me. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. My phone rang. Margaret Chow from Goldfield Shipping. "Claire, I just heard. This is unacceptable. 22 years. And they—" "It's fine, Margaret." "It's not fine. You've been our only consistent point of contact. You know our business better than some of our own executives." I smiled at the irony. Apparently, that knowledge is now considered obsolete. Obsolete. Margaret's laugh was sharp. They think relationships are obsolete. They're about to learn otherwise. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began typing. Not a resume or a job application, but a different kind of document, a timeline, a map of relationships, dependencies, vulnerabilities, all from memory because the most important things were never written in those notebooks anyway. Evan thought he'd erased me by taking my position, my office, my notebooks, but he'd forgotten the most basic rule of business: you can digitize data, but you can't download trust. And trust, once broken, has a way of breaking everything else. The first crack appeared at 9:47 a.m. on a Monday, exactly 48 hours after my termination. My personal phone, the number I'd given to clients who'd become something like friends over 2 decades, lit up with a call from Margaret Chow at Goldfield Shipping. "Claire, I need to understand what's happening at Northgate. Derek just sent us an automated relationship survey. A survey, after 15 years of partnership." I set down my coffee carefully. "I'm sure it's part of their new digital-first approach." "Digital first?" Margaret's laugh was sharp. "He didn't even know we'd moved our headquarters last year. The survey was addressed to our old building." By noon, my phone was a symphony of confusion and frustration. James Morrison had received a proposal template that referenced the wrong industry. Patricia Williams at Stanton Logistics was asked to verify contract details from 2018 contracts that had been renegotiated 3 times since then. David Park from Pacific Transport had gotten an AI-generated email thanking him for his patience during their recent merger. They hadn't merged. They'd acquired a competitor, a distinction that mattered enormously in our industry. The text messages were even more telling. "Who the hell is Derek? Since when does Northgate communicate via chatbot? Did you know your replacement thinks we're still shipping through Portland? We closed that route in 2019. I didn't respond to most of them. What could I say? That the relationships they'd built weren't valued anymore. that their business had been reduced to data points in a CRM system operated by someone who'd never shared a meal with them, never celebrated their wins or problem-solved through their crises. Sarah Martinez called me that evening, whispering like she was in a spy movie. "Claire, it's chaos here. Morrison Industries just sent a formal complaint. Goldfield's threatening to pull their contract. Robert's been in crisis meetings all day." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said neutrally. "Sorry to hear, Claire. Pacific Transport just canceled their renewal meeting. David Parks specifically said if you're not there, there's nothing to discuss." The dominoes were falling faster than even I had anticipated. Tuesday brought escalation. An email blast went out from Evan's team. I still had friends who forwarded me things announcing a client relationship optimization initiative. They were bringing in consultants to rebuild strategic partnerships using best-in-class digital engagement tools. Translation: they were panicking. By Wednesday, the bleeding had become a hemorrhage. Margaret Chow made good on her threat, sending a formal notice of intent to terminate Goldfield's contract worth $47 million annually. The letter, which somehow found its way to my inbox, courtesy of a sympathetic soul in legal, was a masterpiece of corporate fury. After 15 years of partnership built on personal trust and deep understanding of our business needs, we cannot accept this degradation of service. The recent changes in account management demonstrate a fundamental misunderstanding of why we chose Northgate as our logistics partner. Thursday's casualty was Morrison Industries. James Morrison didn't bother with formal notices. He simply called Robert directly and informed him they were moving their $32 million annual contract to Northgate's biggest competitor, the one that had been courting them for years, but never succeeded because of, as James put it, Claire's relationship management. "Your new guy sent me a pitch deck for services we don't need." James had apparently told Robert. Claire would have known that. Hell, Claire knew what I needed before I did. Sarah called me again Thursday night, sounding exhausted. "Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Robert's flying back from Tokyo." The phrase catastrophic client relations failure was used multiple times. "That sounds serious," I offered. "Serious, Claire. We're looking at over $100 million in lost revenue, and that's just what's confirmed. Legal says 3 more clients are reviewing their contracts." Friday arrived, wrapped in karma. My phone buzzed at 7 a.m. A LinkedIn notification. 3 headhunters had messaged me overnight, all referencing my availability and track record of client retention. The industry vultures were circling, smelling blood in the water at Northgate. But the most interesting message came from an unexpected source, Robert Thornton himself. "Claire, I need to speak with you urgently. Please call me at your earliest convenience." I didn't call, not yet. Instead, I made myself a proper breakfast, took a long shower, and dressed in my favorite suit, the navy one I'd worn to sign the Goldfield account all those years ago. My phone rang again. "Robert," I let it go to voicemail. The local business journal's website had picked up the story by lunch. Northgate Solutions faces client exodus following leadership changes. The article was careful, professional, but the subtext was clear: a digitization initiative had backfired spectacularly. Evan's LinkedIn profile, I noticed during my casual browsing, had been updated. The aggressive digital transformation leader tagline had been quietly changed to strategic operations executive. The man was already hedging his bets. By 3 p.m., my voicemail was full. Robert had called 6 times. Various board members had reached out. Even Janet from HR had left a message, her voice lacking its usual corporate smoothness. The final call of the day came from Margaret Chow. "I wanted you to hear it from me first," she said. "We've signed with Pinnacle Logistics. They offered us something Northgate no longer has." "Better rates?" I asked, though I knew the answer. "A relationship manager who knows our business, specifically. They hired someone who understands that my CFO hates morning meetings. My operations director is allergic to shellfish, and our Shanghai office celebrates the lunar calendar. Funny how those details matter when you're trusting someone with $47 million worth of cargo annually." After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen, watching the sunset through the window. My phone continued buzzing texts, calls, emails. Northgate was hemorrhaging, and everyone seemed to think I had the bandage. I did. Of course, 22 years of relationship capital doesn't just evaporate because someone takes your office and confiscates your notebooks. It lives in the trust you've built, the promises you've kept, the times you've answered the phone at midnight because a client needed help. Evan had thought he was removing outdated processes. Instead, he'd removed the foundation, and everyone from the boardroom to the loading dock was beginning to understand the difference. The irony was delicious. They'd needed a digital transformation to realize that some things can't be digitized. My phone rang again. Robert. This time, I smiled as I watched his name flash on the screen. Let him wait. Let them all wait. The cracks had become chasms, and I hadn't even started trying yet. The call I finally answered came on Sunday evening. Robert's voice carried the weight of a man who'd spent the weekend watching his empire crumble in real time. Claire, thank you for taking my call. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from. You're not wrong, I said, pouring myself a glass of wine. But I'm listening. I'll cut to the chase. We need you back. The board has given me full authority to make this right. Define right, Robert. A heavy sigh crackled through the phone. We've lost $127 million in confirmed contracts. Another $85 million is under review. The consultants we brought in lasted exactly 1 day before telling us the problem was obvious. We'd eliminated the human element from human relationships. Expensive lesson, I observed. Claire, I'm prepared to offer you complete autonomy, your own division, direct report to me, no interference from anyone else. He couldn't even say Evan's name. And Evan, I asked. That's being addressed. The board has concerns about his judgment. His judgment, I let the silence stretch. Robert, he systematically dismantled relationships worth hundreds of millions because he couldn't see past his MBA theories. That's not poor judgment. That's corporate vandalism. You're right. You're absolutely right. Which is why I need you back. Name your terms. I stood, walking to my window. The city lights sparkled below, indifferent to corporate drama playing out in boardrooms and phone calls. I'll meet with you, Tuesday, 10 a.m. But Robert, this isn't a negotiation. It's going to be a presentation of requirements. Anything, Claire, whatever it takes. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and began drafting. Not demands, requirements. There was a difference, and it mattered. Monday was a symphony of preparation. I called 3 clients, not the ones who'd left, but the ones still hanging on, confused and frustrated. Their stories were remarkably similar: automation replacing attention, algorithms replacing understanding, efficiency replacing effectiveness. Patricia Williams at Stanton Logistics summed it up best. They keep sending me dashboards. Claire, dashboards, I don't need data visualization. I need someone who understands that our fiscal year ends in October, not December, and why that matters for our planning. I took notes. Proper handwritten notes in a new leather journal I'd bought specifically for this purpose. Tuesday morning arrived crisp and bright. I chose my wardrobe carefully. The gray suit that said authority, the watch Robert had given me at my 15-year anniversary, the leather portfolio that had survived every major deal of my career. Northgate's headquarters looked the same from the outside, but the energy inside was pure panic. Security waved me through with barely a glance, apparently. Everyone knew why I was there. The elevator ride to the executive floor felt like ascending to a throne room where the king had realized his crown was made of paper. The boardroom was full, not just Robert, but the entire executive committee. Evan sat at the far end, his usual swagger replaced by something that looked suspiciously like fear. Claire. Robert stood, gesturing to a chair. Thank you for coming. I didn't sit. Instead, I placed my portfolio on the table and opened it to reveal a single sheet of paper. Let's be clear about what's happening here, I began. You didn't lose those clients because of digital transformation. You lost them because you confused digitization with dehumanization. You thought relationships were inefficient. Turns out, they were your only competitive advantage. Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Good. My requirements are simple, I continued. First, I return as Executive Vice President of Strategic Client Relations, new title, new division, reporting directly to Robert.
Done, Robert said immediately.
I'm not finished. Second, I have full autonomy over my division. No oversight, no optimization consultants, no digital transformation initiatives unless I approve them. Agreed. Third, I need access to all client accounts past, present, and potential. That includes the ones we've lost. I'll need to rebuild from the ground up. Of course. Fourth, I turn to look directly at Evan. I conduct a full audit of all client-facing changes made in the last quarter. Any person, policy, or system that damaged client relationships will be reviewed, and if necessary, removed. Evan's face went pale. He understood the implication. Claire, one of the board members interjected. That seems non-negotiable, I finished. You brought me here because relationships are bleeding out. I'm offering to be your surgeon, but I need to remove what's causing the hemorrhage. The room fell silent. Robert looked at his board members, reading their faces. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out a second sheet. These are the 5 clients we've lost. I want authorization to win them back. Whatever it takes, pricing, terms, guarantees. You burned bridges I spent decades building. Rebuilding them won't be cheap. What exactly are you proposing? Robert asked. I'm proposing we admit our mistakes, publicly, if necessary. We tell them that Northgate lost its way but has course corrected. We acknowledge that relationships aren't line items on a digital dashboard. They're the foundation of sustainable business. That's unprecedented, someone murmured. So is losing $127 million in a week, I countered. Robert stood slowly. The board will need to discuss. The board can discuss all it wants, I interrupted. But while you're debating, Morrison is signing with our competitors, Goldfield is transferring their inventory, Pacific Transport is rewriting their RFPs to exclude us. Every hour you deliberate costs millions. I closed my portfolio. You have my requirements. You know where to find me. I made it to the door before Robert spoke again. Claire, please, we accept. All of it. I turned back slowly. All of it. Complete autonomy, the audit, the authority to win back clients, everything. And the person responsible for this disaster, I asked, not looking at Evan but making sure everyone knew who I meant. Robert's jaw tightened. Will be handled appropriately. Define appropriately. That's an HR matter. No, I said firmly. It's a client confidence matter. How can I ask them to trust Northgate again if the person who broke that trust is still making decisions? The board members exchanged glances. Evan sat frozen, his digital revolution crumbling around him. You'll have what you need, Robert said finally. Can you start immediately? I smiled for the first time since entering the building. I'll need my old office back, the one with the harbor view. Client relationships require the right environment. It's yours. Then I'll see you tomorrow morning. We have a lot of relationships to rebuild. As I left, I passed Evan in the hallway. He was already carrying a box, his corporate swagger replaced by the shuffle of defeat. Evolution doesn't care about feelings, I reminded him quietly as I passed. He didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. The hunter had become the hunted, and I hadn't even started hunting yet. Wednesday morning. I walked through Northgate's doors with the quiet confidence of someone who'd already won the war. The security guard, Marcus, actually smiled. Welcome back, Ms. Donovan. They moved your things back to your office yesterday. Thank you. Marcus, how's Angela doing at Cornell? His face lit up. Dean's list last semester. She says thanks again for the recommendation letter. Details, relationships, the things algorithms couldn't replicate. My office had been restored, but it felt different now. The same harbor view, the same mahogany desk, but with the weight of absolute authority. On my desk sat a new laptop, a stack of contracts for review, and in what I assumed was someone's attempt at symbolism, a brand new leather notebook. I spent the first hour reading through the damage reports, The numbers were worse than what Robert had shared. Beyond the confirmed losses, another dozen clients had gone silent, the corporate equivalent of a death rattle. Evan's digital transformation had transformed Northgate into a case study of what not to do. My first call was to Margaret Chow. "Claire." She sounded genuinely surprised. "I heard rumors you were back, but..." "Not rumors. I'm heading up strategic client relations now. Full autonomy." "And Evan?" "Is pursuing other opportunities." Margaret's laugh was rich with satisfaction. "That's corporate speak for, 'we fired his ass,' isn't it?" "I couldn't possibly comment on HR matters," I said, smiling. "But I can comment on this. Northgate knows it failed you. I know we failed you, and I'm calling to make it right." "Claire, we've already signed with Pinnacle. For your West Coast operations, I pulled the public filings, but your East Coast contract doesn't renew until October. Give me 6 months to prove Northgate has learned from its mistakes." Silence. "Then what are you proposing?" "Dinner, Thursday night, Chez Laurent. I remember you loved their wine selection. Bring your CFO and operations director. Let me show you what Northgate looks like when relationships matter again." By lunch, I'd made 17 calls, 3 hard no's, 5 maybes, and 9 agreements to meet. Not bad for a morning's work. Sarah Martinez appeared at my door with coffee and intelligence. "The whole building's buzzing," she reported. "Evan's team has been reassigned or let go. Derek lasted about 30 minutes into your first day before submitting his resignation." "Smart boy," I murmured, reviewing a contract. "There's more. Robert's called an all-hands for Friday. Word is he's announcing a complete restructuring of client services under your direction." I looked up. "And morale?" "Honestly, Relief, the old guard is thrilled. The Evan loyalists are updating their resumes. Everyone else is waiting to see what you do." What I did was systematic. Every client who'd left got a personal call. Every client considering leaving got a visit. Every employee who'd been marginalized during the digital revolution got a meeting. Thursday's dinner with Margaret was a masterclass in relationship repair. I didn't bring presentations or data dashboards. I brought apologies, accountability, and a proposal that acknowledged their specific needs details gleaned from 20 years of careful attention, not from a CRM system. "You know what Pinnacle doesn't have?" Margaret asked over dessert. "They don't have someone who remembers that our Shanghai office celebrates Golden Week, or that our CFO's daughter just started at Juilliard." "Violin, if I remember correctly," I said. "Cello, but close enough," she smiled. "When can you start handling our East Coast operations?" Friday's all-hands meeting was standing room only. Robert spoke first. Corporate contrite but clear about the path forward. "Northgate lost its way," he admitted. "We confused efficiency with effectiveness, metrics with meaning, but we're course-correcting, and Claire Donovan is leading that correction." When I took the podium, I kept it simple. Relationships are not inefficient. They're not outdated. They're not pre-digital relics. They're the reason clients trust us with their businesses. Anyone who doesn't understand that fundamental truth doesn't belong at Northgate. The applause was immediate and genuine. Over the next 2 weeks, I rebuilt my division from the ground up. The hiring criteria were simple emotional intelligence over algorithms, intuition over automation, and the ability to remember that behind every contract was a human being who needed to trust us. James Morrison agreed to a meeting after I sent him a handwritten note, not an email acknowledging our failures and proposing a path forward. Pacific Transport came back after I flew to Seattle personally, sitting through a 4-hour meeting where I mostly listened. But the real victory came in the details. The new CRM system Evan had implemented, I didn't eliminate it, I subordinated it. Technology became a tool to enhance relationships, not replace them. The digital dashboards remained, but only after human insight had provided context. "You know what's ironic?" Robert said during one of our weekly meetings. "The board loves the hybrid approach. We're being called innovative for combining high-tech with high-touch." "There's nothing innovative about it," I replied. "It's just common sense." The numbers told the story. Within a month, we'd recovered $73 million of the lost revenue. Within 2 months, We were signing new clients who'd heard about our relationship renaissance. The business media loved the narrative, a company that remembered the human element in an increasingly digital world. One evening, I found myself alone in my office, harbor lights reflecting off the water, my new notebook now filled with careful observations about rebuilt relationships and new connections sat closed on my desk. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Jamie, the intern who'd left me that note of support, stood in the doorway. "Ms. Donovan, I wanted to thank you for showing us that there's more to business than metrics." "There always has been," I said. "Some people just need expensive lessons to remember it." As Jamie left, I opened my notebook to tomorrow's schedule. Breakfast with Morrison, lunch with 3 potential clients, dinner with the team to celebrate landing the Whitfield account. Relationships, messy, inefficient, utterly human relationships. Evan had been right about one thing: evolution doesn't care about feelings. But he'd misunderstood the lesson. In business, as in nature, it's not the strongest or the most digital that survive. It's the most connected. The restructuring took 3 months, but the real work happened in the shadows. While I rebuilt client relationships by day, I spent my evenings conducting the audit I'd promised: a forensic examination of every decision, every expense, every strategic move Evan had made during his brief reign. What I found was worse than incompetence. It was corporate malpractice dressed up as innovation. The digital transformation budget had ballooned to $8.7 million, with $3.2 million going to consultants who delivered nothing but PowerPoints and buzzwords. Another $2.1 million went to software licenses for systems that duplicated existing functions. But the most damning discovery was a series of contracts with vendors that happened to share board members with Evan's previous company. I documented everything meticulously. Handwritten notes transferred to secure digital files. Paper trails mapped and cross-referenced. Financial irregularities highlighted and verified by forensic accountants I'd quietly hired. Sarah Martinez proved invaluable, sliding me documents that painted an increasingly dark picture. He was building his own empire, she told me over coffee one evening, using Northgate's money to set up systems he could leverage at his next job. "Keep that opinion to yourself," I advised, "but keep the documents coming." By month 4, my dual existence had created 2 different Northgates. The public face showed a company recovering brilliantly, with client confidence restored and revenue climbing. The private reality was that I'd uncovered enough financial creativity to sink several careers. Robert knew something was coming. Our weekly meetings had taken on a tense quality, his questions probing for hints about what my audit had revealed. "Just focusing on rebuilding," I'd say with a smile that revealed nothing. The client wins kept coming. Morrison Industries not only returned but increased their contract by 30%. Goldfield agreed to a phased return, starting with their East Coast operations. Even Pacific Transport, who'd been the most vocal about leaving, signed a new 5-year deal after I spent a weekend in Seattle addressing their concerns personally. But it was the internal victories that mattered most for what was coming. I'd identified every person Evan had brought in, every process he'd changed, every system he'd implemented. More importantly, I documented the cost not just in dollars, but in damaged relationships and lost trust. The file I compiled grew thicker each week. Expense reports that didn't add up, vendor contracts that favored suppliers over Northgate, training programs that trained no one but cost thousands, a digital infrastructure that created more problems than it solved. My favorite discovery was a $75,000 invoice for relationship mapping software, a program that promised to use AI to predict client behavior. It had been used exactly once, incorrectly identifying our most loyal clients as high risk for departure. Those were the clients Evan had targeted for optimization. Those were the relationships he destroyed. I scheduled individual meetings with every department head, framing them as routine check-ins, but actually gathering intelligence. The stories were remarkably consistent. Evan had promised efficiency but delivered chaos, promised innovation but delivered expense, promised transformation but delivered destruction. He told us the old ways were killing the company, the head of operations told me. But the only thing dying was our client base. Week by week, I tightened the noose. Each recovered client made Evan's failures more stark. Each financial irregularity I uncovered made his eventual reckoning more certain. Each employee who thrived under restored leadership made his toxic management more obvious. The beautiful irony was that my success in rebuilding made my audit more devastating. I wasn't just documenting failure, I was proving that the failure was unnecessary, expensive, and potentially criminal. One Thursday evening, while reviewing vendor contracts, I found the smoking gun. A consulting firm hired by Evan for $400,000 had delivered exactly one product, a recommendation to hire more consultants. The firm's CEO, Evan's former business partner. I added it to the file, now thick enough to require its own briefcase. My assistant knocked. "Ms. Donovan, Mr. Thornton would like to see you." Robert's office felt smaller than usual, weighted with unspoken concerns. "The board is thrilled with the turnaround," he began. "You've worked miracles." "I've done my job," I corrected. "The job that should never have been interrupted." "About the audit." "Is ongoing," I interrupted smoothly. "Complex situations require thorough investigation. The board is asking for a timeline." I smiled. "Tell the board that proper audits, like good relationships, can't be rushed, but they'll have their answers soon." Robert's relief was palpable. He thought soon meant weeks, maybe months. He didn't understand that I'd already gathered everything I needed. That night, I organized my findings into a presentation that would be impossible to ignore or minimize. Every slide supported by evidence, every accusation backed by documents, every dollar accounted for and traced. But I wasn't ready to present it. Not yet. There was one more piece to put in place, one more relationship to leverage. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a contact I'd been saving, Amanda Walsh, senior reporter at the Financial Tribune, who'd been covering Northgate's miraculous turnaround with interest. "Amanda, it's Claire Donovan. I think it's time we had that off-the-record conversation about corporate transformation. The real story is more interesting than you know." Friday morning, I stood in my office, looking out at the harbor. 6 months ago, I'd been escorted from this building like a criminal. Now, I held the future of several careers in a leather briefcase. The final board meeting was scheduled for next week. The audit report was complete, comprehensive, and catastrophic for those who'd enabled Evan's reign. But I had one more meeting to conduct first, a special session I'd requested with a very specific attendee list. I opened my calendar and typed a simple meeting invitation. Transition Planning Meeting, Monday, 9:00 a.m., Conference Room A, required attendees, E, Price. My finger hovered over the send button. In my briefcase sat enough evidence to end careers, trigger lawsuits, and possibly criminal investigations. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was simpler: to demonstrate that relationships, trust, and human judgment weren't just nice to have. They were everything. I hit send. The ending I'd scripted was about to begin. Monday morning arrived wrapped in fog, the harbor barely visible through my office windows, fitting weather for an execution. Evan arrived at 8:55, his former swagger replaced by something brittle and defensive. He'd lost weight, his suit hanging loose on shoulders that no longer carried corporate authority. The predator had become prey, and he knew it. I let him sit in Conference Room A for exactly 5 minutes, long enough to sweat, not long enough to build defenses. When I entered, I carried only 2 items, a leather portfolio and a single cup of coffee. For myself, he'd get nothing from me, not even caffeine. "Claire," he started, attempting authority he no longer possessed. "This is harassment. I've already been terminated. Whatever vindictive—" I opened the portfolio and slid a single document across the table. His termination agreement, the one he'd signed so confidently weeks ago. "Section 12.3, I said quietly. "Post-employment audit clause. You agreed to cooperate with any investigation into financial irregularities during your tenure." His face went gray. "This isn't personal. Evan," I pulled out the first folder. This is about $3.2 million in consulting fees paid to firms that delivered nothing. It's about $400,000 to your former business partner for recommendations to hire more consultants. It's about vendor contracts that bled Northgate while enriching your network. Each folder landed on the table with a soft thud. Each thud made him sink lower in his chair. The Goldfield presentation you botched. You blamed outdated relationship management, but the real reason was that you diverted resources from client service to fund your digital empire building. Morrison Industries didn't leave because we were behind the times. They left because you cut the travel budget for relationship managers while spending $75,000 on software that didn't work. You can't prove. Invoice 337B, I interrupted, sliding another document forward. Your signature, Invoice 451X. Your approval, Contract Addendum 7, your initials. Would you like me to continue? I have 6 hours of documentation. He stared at the papers spreading across the table like crime scene photos. What do you want? Want? I leaned back, studying him. I wanted to keep doing my job. I wanted 22 years of relationship building to be valued. I wanted competence over charisma. But we don't always get what we want, do we? Are you going to the authorities? I let the silence stretch until sweat beaded on his forehead. That depends entirely on this conversation. Northgate needs to recover $2.8 million in questionable expenses. Your severance package, coincidentally, includes $2.8 million in stock options that haven't vested. His jaw clenched. That's everything I have coming. Yes, I agreed. It is. This is extortion. This is mathematics. You cost Northgate $127 million in lost contracts and $2.8 million in questionable expenses. We're recovering what we can. Sign the forfeiture papers, and the criminal investigation recommendation disappears. Refuse, and Amanda Walsh at the Financial Tribune gets an interesting package tomorrow morning. His hands shook as he reached for the pen I offered. For what it's worth, I said as he signed, you were right about one thing. Evolution doesn't care about feelings. It's just that you misunderstood what was evolving. It wasn't business that needed to become less human. It was leadership that needed to become more so. He finished signing and pushed the papers back. We're done here, I said, standing. Security will escort you out. Again. At the door. I turned back one final time. Oh, and Evan. That pre-digital relic you mocked, my notebook. It contained detailed documentation of every client interaction for 20 years. When the forensic accountants needed to verify legitimate expenses versus your creative accounting, guess what provided the baseline? His face was a study in comprehension and defeat. Handwritten notes, I smiled. Turns out they're admissible in court. Digital files can be altered, but ink on paper, that's permanent. Security was waiting in the hallway, Marcus, who gave me the slightest nod as he led Evan away for the last time. I returned to my office where Robert was waiting, the signed forfeiture papers in my hand. It's done, I said simply. The board wants to know if there's any further exposure. Not anymore. We've recovered what we can financially. The reputation damage will heal with time and continued performance. The criminal aspects. I shrugged. Evan made the smart choice. Robert studied me carefully. You planned this from the beginning, the moment you came back. I planned to rebuild relationships and restore trust. Everything else was just evolution. That afternoon, the final numbers came in. Full recovery of the Goldfield contract, Morrison Industries increasing their commitment by 40%, Pacific Transport recommending us to 3 subsidiaries, total recovered revenue, $147 million, net gain over pre-Evan levels, $20 million. Sarah Martinez brought champagne at 5 p.m. To the extinction of the dinosaurs, she toasted. No, I corrected, raising my glass. To proving that some things labeled dinosaurs are actually foundations, and foundations, built properly, outlast everything else. As the sun set over the harbor, painting the sky in shades of vindication, I opened my notebook, the new one, leather-bound and already half-filled with observations about clients, employees, and the delicate art of building trust. The first entry, written on my first day back, still made me smile. They thought erasing me would modernize them. They never understood that I wasn't holding them back. I was holding them together. Beneath it, I'd written something else, a reminder for the future. Evolution isn't about replacing the human element. It's about remembering why it matters. The fog had lifted. The harbor stretched clear to the horizon. And somewhere out there, Evan Price was learning that the most dangerous enemy isn't the one who fights back. It's the one who lets you destroy yourself, then returns to build something better on your ashes. Revenge, served at exactly the right temperature, professional. Thank you for listening to this story of corporate revenge and vindication. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed Claire's journey from humiliation to triumph, please subscribe to the channel and share your own experiences with workplace politics. Have you ever witnessed someone underestimate the power of relationships in business? Let's discuss in the comments.